From William & Mary's Raymond A. Mason School of Business and the Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance, this is the 757 Recovery Podcast, a limited-run podcast series dedicated to helping the Hampton Roads community navigate the economic and social changes brought about by COVID-19. Today's episode is all about entrepreneurship. Our host will be Jeffrey Rich, Chief Marketing Officer at William & Mary's Raymond A. Mason School of Business.
Today, I'll be joined by two stellar entrepreneurial minds within the Hampton Roads community. William & Mary Professor of Business, Dr. Rachel Frazier, and local entrepreneur, journalist, and author, Zack Miller. Dr. Frazier and I will have a one-on-one discussion regarding her newfound role as Assistant Director of the William & Mary Entrepreneurship Center and the Greater Williamsburg Incubator Launchpad. Rachel has over a decade of experience commercializing academic technologies, and she is passionate about helping high-tech startups and academic innovators identify viable business models and connect to their first customers. Rachel founded and leads a performance materials company that serves the automotive industry, and she actively encourages and supports women startups. After Dr. Frazier and I have a one-on-one discussion, we'll be joined by Hampton Roads entrepreneur Zack Miller. Zack was introduced to entrepreneurship when he was just 10 years of age. After earning his degree from West Virginia, Zack earned firsthand experience in starting and growing dozens of businesses while also investing, advising, and mentoring thousands more. Zack created the local Hampton Roads incubator, Hatch. In 2012, he was named top entrepreneur in Virginia and has been a featured speaker in TEDx Hampton Roads. While balancing his entrepreneurial endeavors, Zack hustled his way to being a host of a weekly business television show, which has allowed him to interview hundreds of entrepreneurs across a myriad of industries. In 2018, Zack signed with Morgan James Publishing in New York City to publish his soon-to-be bestseller, Anomaly: How to Finally Stand Out from the Crowd. So we're here with Rachel Frazier today, and she's with Launchpad. Let me first kind of just start by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and Launchpad.
Thank you, Jeff. Launchpad is actually a partnership between the City of Williamsburg, James City County, and York County, and William & Mary. And basically, we're here to support entrepreneurs who are looking to start and grow businesses in our region. And really what we do is we offer educational programs. We offer a fantastic mentor network and an inspiring space to actually bring entrepreneurs together so that they can work alongside each other, learn from each other, and hopefully start successful companies. We work with them to basically help spread the word about what they're doing. We help connect them to funding opportunities, and we literally get in the trenches with them as they work to build their business.
You know, you don't think about a time like this, a pandemic, a worldwide economic implosion, as a great time to start a business. How have you found the market to be in terms of the level of new business activity?
You know, we've seen a lot of stores close, right? Some retail stores, some restaurants, they have literally closed their doors. They're closing locations. We've seen a lot of small businesses have to shift from their normal day-to-day operations out of their brick and mortar store and move to an online marketplace. Another thing that's been really interesting throughout this is that some of the programs and some of the initiatives in the state of Virginia in particular and in the 757 area have continued despite our switch to working remotely. There are initiatives that are working to support entrepreneurs through this. Out of Williamsburg, for example, we have the Cremdell Small Business Network, and they've development center out of Hampton Roads, and they're working to support small businesses. So there are a lot of entrepreneurial activities going on.
When people think about starting a business today, I think one of the intimidating factors is technology. You know, how do you overcome a concern that you don't have the technical aptitude to promote your business? Or if you're in a technology business and you've got a great idea, how do you go about assembling resources that can help bring that vision to fruition? Has that been a major hurdle, or are you finding now that maybe technology and the internet is a leveler?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a leveler or not. Tech has always been one of those really difficult things to get into. I think that the focus is still on before you build out, your new idea. The best thing to do is to actually show by getting people to sign up for what your idea is. It could
A
just
proof
be
of
a
concept.
proof of concept. That's right, a landing page. And I think that still remains the same, because if you think about it, you're talking about having access to people who can literally program something and then create user interfaces. It takes a lot of resources. I think that right now there's very unique opportunity for people who have these ideas to actually connect to students who are, computer science students. These students typically have internships. Some of the internships have been canceled, so there are quite a few people that are looking for things to contribute to. One of the biggest values that students bring to startup companies is their finger is on the pulse of what is now. And when you have that as a startup, you're able to really rapidly reach customers. You're able to give them what they want. You're able to keep it fresh, keep it new. That's what people are looking for from a startup company, right? So student fits in perfectly.
Wow, the way you talk about the value that students can bring to the equation, it almost sounds like it's a mandatory that if you're going to start a business, involve a millennial perspective, a younger perspective that can look at the customer segment that you're trying to develop in maybe a different way, or can help you refine some of that thinking. What have you seen in terms of the folks that have come in to Launchpad and throughout your career in terms of the understanding of the audience and the need to, or the desire to fulfill an unmet need?
I'll just say that customer discovery, customer development is actually a mandatory activity for any incubating company in Launchpad. And really, it never stops. We see even the most mature companies, the ones that continue to be successful, constantly go through the iterative process of discovering what's new. And speaking to, your question about companies that come into the incubator, most of the time they're trying to solve some kind of problem that they see. And every startup, every company has to do customer discovery, and they have to constantly be in touch with their customers. So it is mandatory. If you are going through an incubator, if you are participating in an accelerator program, you have to get out there, you have to interact with your customers. So at that very early stage, it's important to go out and figure out, understand from the customer's point of view, what their problems are, what a solution would look like that could fit into how they operate. Because if it doesn't fit, then they're not going to adopt it. And then really getting to the point where once you understand their problem, using their words from their perspective, then you can turn that into, okay, what aspects of your solution actually link to the problems that customers are having. Once you do that, then you can figure out, well, is this something that I can make money off of, right?
It seems like there's almost two different pathways that entrepreneurs take, two different prototypes of the process. And I think you have, in many cases, why students get MBAs as an example is they don't necessarily have an idea or know what business they're going to go into, but they've learned the process of deconstructing a market, for example, and understanding where there's market share that they can grab versus starting with the idea for the business and then expanding from there. So I imagine you've seen both cases. Does one tend to work better than the other?
I definitely have seen it both ways. And it's really interesting, the question of which is more successful. I'm not sure. Statistically, if you take a look at entrepreneurs, the success rate is pretty low. It's difficult to start something new, right? But there are a lot of case studies out there that say the key to success is understanding your customer first. And so that whole idea of people within organizations actually trying to find that need, the opportunity is in the customer itself, right? The opportunity is being able to deliver value to someone who needs something. And that someone who needs something inevitably is going to be the customer. And entrepreneurs have a tendency to get stuck in a rut. And that's why it's always important to be in close contact with your customers. They help get you out of ruts.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And I think oftentimes it's, getting up and pursuing the idea. So, whether you're an entrepreneur trying to make change, develop innovation within an existing organization, teaching that organization to think differently with new ideas, or you're the person with the brand new idea that meets the need that's previously unmet and you want to build a business around that, or you're the MBA who's just come out of graduate school and has analyzed market shares and segments and figured out where your niche is going to be and where you're going to go out and grab that market share. All of those three scenarios have the same hurdle in front of them, and that is probably access to capital to bring that idea to fruition. What have you seen in terms of access to capital, and how big a hurdle is that for an entrepreneur right now?
It looks right now like there's some funding available to people who are able to respond in some way to the coronavirus. I actually think that in terms of what we're seeing locally, there are quite a few opportunities, and I have been amazed by the people who have started and donated to the Virginia 30-Day Fund. We have the Williamsburg Small Business Relief Fund, and those types of activities are, we're seeing them around this area. And I think that in terms of the funding, if there's something that they see as an opportunity, there is funding available. You have to go out and look for it. The steps to take are reach out to your local university, reach out to your local small business development center, reach out to your SCORE mentor, reach out to an incubator or an accelerator.
We'd like to take a moment to introduce our partners, Trimdell Small Business Network. We understand that as a small business, these times of crisis can be riddled with uncertainty. Trimdell, in association with the Hampton Roads SBDC, is offering free 10-hour counseling services to small business owners within the greater Williamsburg area to navigate your business through the pandemic. To learn more, reach out at trimdellsbn@gmail.com or follow them on Facebook.
So our discussion on entrepreneurship doesn't have to end here. Now joining Dr. Frazier and myself is Mr. Zack Miller, writer of Anomaly, How to Finally Stand Out from the Crowd. So welcome, Zack. Maybe first introduce yourself.
So Jed, let me ask this question. How many advertisements do you think you see each and every day?
Somewhere between hundreds and thousands.
So the last time that I've been able to find an actual statistic that gives me this is in 2013, and the number was 5,000 ads each and every single day. And so our history has told us, oh, we need to focus on our competitor. We need to focus on this other person across the street. When in actuality, it's us versus 4,999 others each and every single day. And so when you pair that with, oh my goodness, by the end of the week, that's 35,000 different ads that I'm competing with, you have to do something that sticks out. And so maybe it's having a poster of The Rock on your wall behind you. Maybe you walk into a networking event filled with suits with a jean jacket and a black t-shirt on. Maybe you just wear a funky bow tie, or maybe you just say hello. And so these are all fun and creative ways to stand out to get that person's attention. And it's paired with the number one question that I get all the time, which is, how do I get people to see me? Because the more people that see me, the more people will buy from me. And so that's why I wrote Anomaly, How to Finally Stand Out from the Crowd.
So let me bring Rachel into the conversation. So innovation drives a lot of new business ideas and startups, but I think people overlook sometimes the need to continuously innovate in the business that you have. What are some things that businesses should be looking at differently given the pandemic that we're experiencing, the economic downturn?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jeff. The whole idea of innovation is not just a new idea. It actually has to go out and be used by someone. I think that that's actually the key. The innovation in any business should be driven by the customer. Anybody who's started a business knows that without customers, you have no business. Anytime you want to change your business model, if we think about the businesses that are moving from face-to-face customer interactions, from brick and mortar to the virtual world, that's an entirely different business model. And there are a lot of things to consider.
And is that consistent with your perspective, Zach, and what you've seen through your work over the years?
Well, yeah. I mean, if someone's not paying for something, I guess you just have a really nice hobby. And I think a thing about innovation that people don't think about is usually the best innovations are the most simplest of innovations. You see a lot of businesses that have these huge, crazy ideas, and it's wonderful, but can you really facilitate and get transactions with all of those things because they're too complicated? I think the more that they innovate, the most simplistic of ways, the more successful they will be.
What are the opportunities that you see to innovate right now in reaction to COVID?
It's constantly looking at who could be my customer and what can I do to bring them in, and figuring out specifically what it needs. Does it need to, if it's COVID specific, does it need to be, I feel that this place is cleaner than others. So you're starting to see a lot of retailers to start make masks of their own kind of in the masses as well. And so we look at this as this big monumental event, when really, if we really peel back the onion, a lot of the things that will be successful are saying, how can we do what we already do, just a slightly different way? So if people are being mandated to wear a mask, what can I do to get them to wear my mask and then put my logo on it somewhere?
And that actually is a really good point, Zach, because with that accelerated adoption, with this rapid change that we've seen, is this going to be a trend? And how does a startup decide, well, do I enter this, or do I just ride this out and wait for the next thing? And I think that's actually a key thing for people to assess, and that comes down to what it is you think you're going to be doing. There've been a lot of supply chain opportunities, during this time, but what happens in 2 years, what's going to be the next big thing, right? And if you're constantly trying to jump on the trend, then that might be difficult to keep up with.
Rachel, what have you seen, as we're now 3 months, give or take, into this? Has the startup market sort of caught up now with COVID-related ideas? Are you seeing people coming to you with ideas that are born directly from what we've gone through the last 3 months?
We've seen a couple of people come to us and say, hey, we have this new idea that is, immediately useful for the current environment. They've honestly been doing this out of the goodness of their hearts, which is kind of interesting. So they're not trying to seek money. They're actually trying to implement something for the good of people, which is actually a big shift. And, if we go back to talking about innovation, I think that there are these incremental innovations that businesses have to do constantly. But I think that we're actually in a paradigm shift in the way that people live. And I think that it will behoove companies and behoove startups to really understand that. Are we going to move into the realm of, telecommuting is common practice for work? And if so, that's going to change job functions of people. It's going to change how they do things on a daily basis. And in that case, there are going to be radical innovations that are going to have to come in.
You got to be able to move with the punches. And so be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if you don't want to take a lot of risk, then maybe starting a business isn't the right thing for you.
If you think back 20 years, you did not think about starting a business without first sitting down, spending weeks, months, maybe writing a business plan, researching every element of it, figuring out, exactly how to get from point A to point B, C, D, and E. Where today, I think a lot of folks in this space would say, yeah, you want to have a business plan, but it's a summary level abbreviated plan that presents your best thinking at the time, but don't overthink it to the point that it becomes an encumbrance from moving that idea forward, because the minute you move it forward, that business plan is obsolete.
That goes directly back to what Zach said. You have to be in tune to your customers. You have to be constantly making changes that are actually going to resonate with your customers.
So maybe, you think about things that are effective communications tools, an elevator speech, for example, succinctly explaining what this business idea is or how it serves a market or what customer niche you're going after are all important activities to pursue. So you can socialize that idea and hopefully get people nodding their heads and agreeing. Yeah, it is a great idea.
There's a really 3-step process that I think about with that. And so it's, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? How are you solving it? And then traction. That's the thing that's going to get people to pop onto it, right? So if you go to a party and no one's there, you're not going to go in. That traction piece is really, really, really important. And that's what really hooks people and creates that habit of getting them to stick in, to grow with you.
And that traction piece is what leads to any kind of funding, right? Whether it's a small business loan from a bank, you have to show that the opportunity is there, that people are actually going to buy into what it is you're doing. Or if you're trying to raise private capital, you have to show that traction piece. So that's a really good point, Zach. There are different programs in the state, that are fantastic ways to actually try and go figure out, do you have traction or not? The Small Business Development Center has the Innovation Commercialization Assistance Program, the ICAP program, that actually lets entrepreneurs go out and they do customer discovery. But then after they're done with that part of it, if they reach 20 customer interviews, they're paired with a mentor, and there have been a lot of successes that have come out of that.
Well, I want to thank Zach and Rachel for being our guests today. I want to close by asking each of you, if each of you had to predict, one thing that comes out of this, whether big or little, that is different on the tail end of this, what is that? And let me ask, Rachel to go first.
Yeah, that's a really tough question. The governments have shown massive support for small businesses. The communities have shown support for small businesses. And I think that kind of change will continue on, because I do think that people realized with everything that's been going on that, there are lots of folks out there who are in need of certain things, and it just has not been on our radar, right? When we're out living our lives and we're going to the stores that we want to go to, we're happy people. And then, well, what happens if the store is not there? Totally changes our perspective. So I think that we will see a little bit of a shift in the way that small businesses are supported.
I think that's a really interesting observation. So Zach, what do you see? What's the one thing that you see changing from all of this?
Well, because it's 2020 and basically the world has a smartphone, we're able to do basically whatever you want to do in the world. What I think is shifting with that is you're seeing individuals becoming their own media outlets, and maybe you'll see a big brand start to pull them in, like the Joe Rogan podcast did. But you're going to see more individuals create more podcasts. You're going to see more individuals create more content, more shows, and they're going to be creating their own followings. They might be smaller followings, but a very, very rabid fan base that will continue to tune in throughout time, as long as we have extreme access to cell phones and media content. The media providers in there will be individuals creating content around a plethora of different topics, from who knows what, to making pumpkin pies, to knitting like my mom would want to watch.
I want to thank you both for your time today, and hope that both of you continue to push ideas forward and thrive and prosper in this time of disruption and change. So thank you.
You're welcome, Jeff. It's been an honor. Thank you.
And there we have it. That concludes our discussion on entrepreneurship with Dr. Rachel Frazier and Zack Miller. Thank you to our listeners for joining us today for the second episode of the 757 Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Rich.
The 757 Recovery Podcast is brought to you by the William & Mary Raymond A. Mason School of Business and the Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance. Executive producers include Jeffrey Rich and Jack Cornett. Associate producers include Kevin Clark, Sophie Morris, Katie Copey, and Ishan Kanpur.